Very good afternoon to all the students of class 11. Today I'm going to take on the poem Father to Son. Okay. Father to Son, written by Elizabeth Jennings. Elizabeth Jennings' lifespan was from 1926 to 2001. She was a British poet and well known for her clarity of style and love for delineating or portraying human relationships in her poetry. Now we move on to the poem. This poem, Father to Son, is a dramatic monologue, and it articulates or expresses a father's lament about the gap that has been created between the father and son in that relationship. He feels that they have become strangers, they are not familiar with each other, and they do not share any common interests. So it is a lament. He's feeling sad over that fact, and in his heart of hearts, he longs for a rapprochement, a reconciliation, a patch up with his son. So he wants to put an end to this strangeness. Now, this poem, it begins on an autobiographical note. That means autobiographical is like the first line says, I do not. So it begins on an autobiographical note. But slowly, when we reach the last stanza, it takes on a universal phenomena. Because the father and son relationship cannot be limited to a particular area or one person only. This is a very sacred and a very holy relationship all over the world. So then it takes on a universal appeal. So I will read the poem and explain it side by side. I do not understand this child, though we have lived together now in the same house for years. The poet is talking about herself. I do not understand this child. Now, the poet could have used the word my child. The poet could have used the name of the child. But we see the poet has used the word this child. Now, this child shows a lot of impersonal effect to the line, and also shows the frustration of the father about not being able to gel well with the son. So that frustration that he is not calling him my son or the name of the child, but he just says this son. So it is frustration, anger, or whatever the father feels. I do not understand this child, know nothing of him. Though we have lived together now in the same house for years, for many, many years, the child must have been born there, born and brought up by the father in the same house. So they've been living in the same house, under the same roof for so many years. But now a stage has come that there is alienation. They behave like strangers. And it's highly ironic. There is irony in these lines that they have lived here for so long, but today they seem to be strangers. They just cannot understand each other. They have no connect in that sense. Okay? So this is a situational irony. There are in English, as we say, there are three kinds of irony. One, as we have over here, situational irony, living in the same house for years but not knowing each other. Second is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is where at the end of the story or whatever, the climax is not up to what you expect. So that is dramatic irony. Then the third one is verbal irony. Verbal means when you say something and you mean contrary to that, that is verbal irony. So there are three kinds: situational irony, verbal irony, and dramatic irony. And in this poem, we come across situational irony. Situation is such that they're living in the same house for so many years, but they do not know each other. I know nothing of him. What do you think the father should be knowing about him? Nothing of him. Like in childhood, they had a very good relationship. You know, it was mutual love, understanding, everything. But now, as the child grew up, there seems to be a bridge or a gap that has been created, or a gulf that has been created, or a chasm that has been created, a breach. So I know nothing of him. Nothing of him could pertain to his demands, to his grievances. What is the son grieved about? What does he want? He knows nothing. And he cannot, even if he does try to make an effort to say so, but he cannot understand what the child wants. So he says, I know nothing of him. So it means there are totally two worlds, the world of the child and the world of the father. So try to build up a relationship from how he was when small. So when the child was small, there was love, there was understanding. They both shared a very good relationship. A mutual bonding was there. Mutual means both-sided. The father's side also and the son's side also. But unfortunately, over the years, as the child began to grow, the gap between them began to widen, and there was a huge gap. Now, this gap, which in today's language we term as generation gap. So this is the gap the poet is talking about, the generation gap, and this comes, in every generation we witness it, and children and parents, there is a certain kind of a divide over issues, and they don't, their views don't match. So that is the kind of thing happening. So the father wants to build up a relationship. He wants to build up that that connection. He wants to rebuild that connection again. And from where is he's going to pick up the loose ends? From where is he going to pick them up? He's going to pick them up from his childhood, because that was the time when they shared a very good bonding, a very good connect. So happy memories, happy times when they both were together. There was great bonding between the two of them. So he wants to pick up these loose ends from his childhood, from the happy memories, to begin afresh, because he wants to patch up. So from where does he want to pick up good memories and happy memories, so that he can begin afresh or start anew from his childhood days when he was small. And when children are small, they're dependent on parents, and parents and children, they share a very warm kind of a relationship. So he also wants to begin afresh, make a new start from the pleasant and happy memories of the son's childhood days, when they were so happy with each other. Then we come on to, yet have I killed the seed I spent, or sown it where the land is his and none of mine. Now there is a question mark at the end of the sentence. So the father cannot understand where things went wrong. But the realization in the father has set in that, he's to be blamed for it, and maybe the whole thing was because of his lack of understanding and the strangeness that has come into their relationship. So there is a realization with in the father. Okay. Yet have I killed the seed I spent. Killed the seed. Now in this stanza, we see agrarian imagery has been used. Agrarian pertains to agriculture, agrarian farming. So, and imagery is the image that has been created by the poet. How the father is like a farmer, and the son is the seed. The seed I spent. So the seed is another figure of speech over here, which is a metaphor. A metaphor, because the seed implies the son. And yet have I killed the seed I spent. Now, spent over here, we know it is the past. It is a form of spending money. But there is another connotation to spend. That is all the energy that had been used by the father in nurturing the child, in bringing up the child. All that has been put to waste today, because the father and son cannot see eye to eye. So he feels that the seed I spent, The seed that I sowed and I spent and exhausted my energy, utilized all my resources in bringing up this child. So spent. This we also use like when we say, I felt completely spent after climbing the mountain, or I felt completely spent after running a marathon. So that is when you're exhausted, when your energy levels are very low. So here spent, please try to understand, spent over here means that the father sowed the seed, that is brought up the child. The child is the seed, the son is the seed. So in bringing up the child, in nurturing the child, the father has exhausted all his energy, his resources. He sowed the seed, he gave the child a conducive environment to grow like a plant grows. The farmer looks after the plant, he toils day and night. So similarly, the father has also spent a lot of energy, time, and given a lot to that seed, nurtured it to his, to the best of his ability. But what happened later on, when the plant began to grow, it did not grow according to the expectations of the father. The father had some kinds of expectations, but the child does not seem to grow up. The plant did not seem to bear fruit, so to speak. So to bear fruit, a farmer is very pleased when he toils hard in his fields and he looks after, he sows the seeds, he waters them, he adds manure to it, and he looks after it, saves it from, any kind of threat or danger of animals and birds and things like that. And in the end, he is ready for his harvest. But unfortunately over here, the father, who is like a farmer, he feels that everything has been wasted and the child did not come up to the expectations of the father. The seed I spent, because what we say is the father feels that whatever I had done, and when it was time to bear fruit, when children grow up, when it was time to bear fruit, to enjoy the fruit, to enjoy the company of the child, to feel very happy that you have a successor or an heir, at that point of time things went wrong. So when it was time to bear the fruit, to enjoy the fruit of labor, at that time the father does not get what he expected. So spent over here it means that, okay? Or sown it where the land is his and none of mine. So the father begins to analyze and realization sets in. So he begins to see where where things went wrong. I mean, like he had nurtured him so well, he looked after him, he cared about him so much, but then where did things go wrong? And he wants to find out that where exactly things began to take an ugly turn. Or sown it where the land is his. So he's saying probably I have sown that seed on his land and none of mine. Now, sown the seed in the land. Now, this land over here could mean the space or the world of the child. And so he's trying to say, and none of mine, that this land and this space is actually not mine. Why? Because the father and the son, they are poles apart. They are poles apart. So there's so much of distancing between them that the father actually begins to feel that maybe he has sown the seeds on his land and not on mine. This is why, when does he think all this? When he sees that his expectations are not fulfilled. When his plant has not borne fruit. Okay? The land is his and none of mine. Okay, now this could, there could be another reason to it is the child has developed, the father has not been able to come to terms or to accept the fact that when children grow up, I mean, they have their own world, they have their own space. And the son here also, he has developed his own personality and his individuality. So as they grow, now they're no longer dependent. like the previous poem that we did, childhood, you saw that at a certain age, after the teenage, things like that, children do develop rationality, they develop individuality, they begin to realize, analyze, and they can take decisions on their own. So here also, like if we link it to the poem Childhood, we can see that the child has developed his own personality. He has developed his own individuality. And that is why maybe the father feels that the child has not come up to his expectations, because there must be so many views that they cannot gel together. Whatever the son wanted, maybe the father did not want. What the father wanted, the son did not want. So it is a clash of opinion or a clash of egos. You know how it is. Okay. We speak like strangers. We speak like strangers. There's no sign of understanding in the air. We speak like strangers. Now here I would just like to say that there's a difference between speaking and talking. Speaking means when, it's a one-sided communication. Like I'm speaking, you're listening. So speaking is a one-sided, communication. Whereas talk means a conversation or a discussion between two or more than two people. So sometimes it happens like, sometimes you are listening only for a reply. But sometimes you listen to take in, you're receptive to what the other person is saying. Like at the moment, you must be receptive, or you should be receptive, take in whatever you are listening to all the talking that I am doing. So the word talking here also implies that it is a one-sided communication. We speak like strangers. Speak like strangers. So there is a figure of speech here, and that is a simile. That is a simile. Okay. We speak like strangers. There's no sign of understanding in the air. In the air around. In the air around, in the atmosphere, in the home or the house. Okay. Now, understanding, I would like to say, understanding doesn't mean only to understand, to comprehend what you're saying, to understand what you're saying. Understanding has a deeper connotation. Understanding means to be tolerant and to be sympathetic and empathetic, and at least patiently listen to what the other person wants to say. You have to be sensitive. It means being more aware and sensitive, empathetic and sympathetic and tolerant, and also intuitive in certain ways with the people we love. Today we say that so many marriages, break up. Why? Why do they break up? It's not that they don't love each other, but we can say the love is there, but there is lack of understanding. Relationships break up because it's not that they don't love each other, but because they don't understand each other and they don't understand their emotions. That is a big question mark. So same thing here. So there was lack of understanding over here, means there was lack of tolerance, there was no patience, they were not sympathizing with each other, there was no empathy for each other's emotions and feelings. So no understanding in the air. Okay. The child is built to my design. This child is built to my design. Child is the son. My design. Here you see the possessiveness of the father. That the father, the son resembles the father. He's taken after his father. He looks like his father. So there that possessiveness does come in. That my child, my design, sorry. This child, but here again he's still using this child. It's not saying my child. So that impersonal impact continues. This child is built to my design. The way I look, he resembles me. Yet what he loves. Now yet means but. It's a conjunction. But what he loves, I cannot share. I cannot share means I cannot be a part of. I cannot be a part of all that he wants. So here sharing Sharing, we all share our food together, we share our thoughts together. So here, sharing means to be a part of his world, okay? I cannot share. I cannot be a part of his world, of what he wants. Okay. Yet what he loves, I cannot share. So that means their thoughts don't match at all. So what things that the son loves, the father does not approve of all that. He cannot share, be a part of this child's world. Okay, silence surrounds us. Silence. Why? Because there is no conversation, there is no discussion, they are not on talking terms kind of a thing. There is no warmth in the relationship. So it's like the relationship is very, very cold, okay? So that is why silence surrounds us. There is no communication whatsoever. There is no dialogue. There is no warmth in the relationship. I would have him prodigal, returning to his father's house, the home he knew, rather than see him make and move his world. Now here in this stanza, in these few lines, there is a reference. Figure of speech means allusion. A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N. Allusion. And the allusion is biblical because this is a story that has been taken from the Bible. In the Bible, there was a story of a father that is Adam, and when his children grow up and they demand for their share, so he divides his inheritance among his sons. But the youngest one, he takes his share and he moves out and goes to the city, and there he squanders all the wealth and fortune. Squanders means wastes it, and he just spends all the money without thinking about what he is doing, without thinking about the consequences. So as a result, when all friends are also there with you till you have money, until you can treat them and give them a good time, a happy time. So finally, when all his money was over, it was exhausted, he did not have anything left, so he had no choice but to come back home. And here in this story, the father naturally wants the child back. So he's ready to take the child back at any cost. And how? By forgiving him. That because forgiveness, they say, is a great virtue. God also forgives us. It's a great blessing, a great virtue. And so many things we can stop from turning very ugly if we use the virtue of forgiveness. So this father also takes takes the message from the Bible, and he's ready to bring back his child to his world by forgiving him. So that is the son. Prodigal means wasteful, by wasting, squandering all the wealth, okay? I would have him prodigal. Like the father took him back, the prodigal son. That's the story, the prodigal son, the wasteful son. So just as the father in the biblical story takes back his son by forgiving him, he is also ready to forgive him, because he longs for the betterment of his son. He does not think of any ill for his son. He wants the child back. He wants the same old warmth in their relationship as it was in their childhood. In his childhood, sorry. Okay. Returning to his father's house, the home he knew. Now in this line, please see that his father's house and home. You can see the difference. House and home. What is house? House is just a structure, okay, made of sand and cement and wood or stone or whatever it is. It's just the framework, the structure. But home, when there is love, when there is warmth, when there is sharing, when there is happiness, then only the house turns into a home. And there's a song also. It takes a lot of loving to make a house a home. So we have to reach out. Reach out, we all have to adjust. We have to understand each other's emotions. We have to respect each other's point of view. If there is a difference of opinion, it can always be sorted out by discussing it amicably, in a friendly manner. Respect each other's viewpoint. So he is also asking, so he wants the child to return to his father's house, the structure that is there, the home he knew. So now at the present moment, it is a house because there is no warmth in the relationship. But in the childhood, this house was a home. The home he knew, because when he was a child, it was a home. There was a lot of love, affection, understanding, togetherness. So he wants the child to come back to the home he knew, when they had such good times, pleasant memories, happy memories, when their relationship was very, very strong and warm, rather than see him make and move his world. So the father does not want his child to move away from him and create a world of his own. He does not want that. He wants to have his son back at any cost, even by forgiving him. So rather than see him make and move his world, his space, his area, go into his own little world. Now here, this world that I would talk about, world, what do we generally see? It is the earth as a planet, and all the countries and all the people of these countries living together, that we call world. But here, his world means it is the world of an individual, his world, So it is a kind of an ontological world, which means the world of an individual, his own world. I would forgive him too. Two means also. Who else is the reference? That is the previous reference of the biblical story, okay? Just as in the Bible, Adam, or the father, forgave his son, he is also ready to forgive him. Shaping from sorrow a new love. From this sorrow, from this sadness, we will create a new love. We will begin afresh. We will start anew. We will give it a fresh start, a new start. Now here I would just like to say that sorrow. What does sorrow mean? Sorrow means immense sadness and despair and grief, or when there is, a story of some woe, a feeling of deep distress. And this could be caused by any loss, or it could be caused by disappointment, okay, or misfortune. Now here the sorrow comes from the from the disappointment that the father has experienced at the hands of his son. He's disappointed at the way the child has grown up and not come up to his expectations. So sorrow, sadness, grief, deep despair, and this is because of the disappointment and the way their relationship today stands. It stands on very, unstable ground, shaky ground. Okay, but he still sees a ray of hope, and he says that we can shape from sorrow. From there, we can build up a new relationship which will be based on love. Now we come on to the last stanza. Father and son, we both must live. Now here, in the beginning, the first stanza began with I. So autobiographical note it was, terming to the relationship between a father and his son. Now here we take on another connotation that is a universal connotation. Father and son, all the fathers all over the world and all the sons all over the world. Father and son, this relationship, we both must live on the same globe and the same land. Okay, the same globe, that is the earth, and the same land is the same space, maybe same house, okay, same space, share the same space and not move out to another land. He speaks, I cannot understand. So, speak, as I told you, it's a one-sided communication. So when the child speaks, the father says, I cannot understand. Now this shows that there is total alienation between the two. The bond of understanding has been broken completely. Okay, he speaks and I cannot understand. How can that be possible? A little bit of at least a give and take could be there, but this shows that there is total alienation. What the child is speaking, the father is not understanding anything of that sort. Okay, so they don't, emote on the same level. Okay. He speaks, I cannot understand myself. Why anger grows from grief. So when the child is speaking, the father, he does say so that I cannot understand myself. That means that why this block comes in between. What is this divide that comes in between? And what is that divide? That divide is anger. And why does this anger come? It comes from sorrow. What is the sorrow about? The not so good relationship that he has with his son. Okay, so the grief, the sadness is about this broken relationship. And from this grief, from this sorrow, what happens then later on? Anger comes forth. Now, why does anger come forth from grief? Because when you are grieved, when you are in sorrow, why are you in sorrow? Because you feel that you have been victimized, and victimized due to injustice on your behalf, on your side. Okay, so this says, I cannot understand myself. That is the father saying, why anger grows from grief. There is grief, there is sorrow, there is sadness. And why does anger come from grief? Though when you're sad, you should just be sad. I mean, there's no scope for anger. But there is grief and then there is anger. Why? Because the father feels the pangs of undeserved injustice. In grief, it's not only for the father, the son also must be feeling the same thing. So when there is a break in relationship, or when one is grieved, when one is full of grief, so in grief one feels as if he were the victim of undeserved justice. The son must be feeling the same thing about himself, that the father is not being just to him. And the father also feels the same thing about the son, that the son is not just to him, So this is a victim of undeserved injustice. And this creates a feeling of victimization. And from this victimization, anger springs. You get angry. Okay? So it's just take a small little example. You've had a fight or something with your friend, and the first thing is that when you've had that little fight, you separate, you leave on a note, and then you just cry and cry and cry, and you howl and howl, and you're sad about it. Then when you calm down, you begin to analyze, and then you feel, no, what she said was wrong, that you couldn't have said this, I should have said this. When she said this, I should have said that. So when you're trying to see for yourself that she was wrong, or whether you were wrong, or you were right and she was wrong, so at that time you feel that you have been a victim of undeserved justice, and then that makes you angry. So when you're grieved about something, automatically later on anger springs up, because you feel that you have become a victim of undeserved justice. So when there is anger, there is no scope for love. There is no scope for understanding. So you're bound to even worsen the situation, widen the gulf, widen the rift, widen the breach that is there, and it becomes too deep. And the void that is created can never be filled. We each put out an empty hand, longing for something to forgive. Now they're both putting out. They're trying to reach out to each other, but it is an empty hand. Now, empty hand, empty means, vacant or unoccupied. But here I feel is that there is, because anger is there and they're trying to reach out. So there is no, scope for, in this gesture of extending their hand, putting out an hand is a gesture. So this gesture maybe lacks meaning or sincerity, because they are trying to, break that monotony and break this relationship from, getting spoiled further. They're trying to avoid to patch up or reconciliation or a rapprochement, But maybe this gesture is, not so sincere and has no meaning because things have gone beyond control. But there is a longing for something to forgive, longing, desire, deep desire for something to forgive. That the father also wants that forgiveness should be there and a patch up should be there, rapprochement should be there. Because a father and son relationship cannot go on in this way. They cannot drift apart. They cannot drift apart at all. Okay? So we see over here, we come to an end over here. Okay. I'll just repeat the literary devices. In the first stanza I spoke about situational irony, but there are quite a few instances where there's situational irony, and we go on to that. The literary devices, irony, situational. In the first stanza we said, no, the father and son live in the same house, but they are strangers. Now, second one, each wants to patch up a rapprochement, but they end up causing further drift and alienation. Okay. Then third one is, although the father has brought up the child well, he does not know why the son feels alienated from him. Okay. And so there are three situational ironies that are there. They're living in the same house, but they're living as strangers. Each of them wants a patch up or rapprochement, but this is causing a further drift. And although the father has brought him up according to his will, he has nurtured him, but he still, at this stage, is very, very strongly alienated from him. Okay. Then we have the simile, like in this. We live like strangers. Okay. So that is a simile. The seed was a metaphor. And we had the agrarian imagery. Okay. Where we had the farmer and the plant. The image was created. The agrarian imagery was there. Okay. Now over here, let's come on to the theme. This poem brings or highlights the agony of a breakup in a loving relationship. There's so much of pain. There's so much of, mental torture when a relationship breaks. Now, there could be various reasons for that. As I said, lack of understanding. Lack of understanding means maybe love is there, but you don't understand the emotions of the other person. You're not sympathetic. You're not empathetic. And you don't actually step into the shoes of that person and realize what the other person is going through and what the person is trying to convey. Okay? So here we could say that it could be a clash of personalities. Clash of personalities. And ego problems, So it could be a clash of personalities and it could be ego problems. And sometimes, there is too much of rigidity on the part of the parents. They are rigid because as time is moving on, lots and lots of things are changing. So the best way to move on is to change with time. Of course, you don't have to, do things at the cost of your values. Value system remains the same. But there are certain things that you have to adapt or adjust to with the changing times. So when there is ego, when there is clash of opinion, or when there is rigidity, things begin to go from bad to worse. Okay? And there is lack of understanding and respect, for the other person's viewpoint. Okay. So that is the theme, rigid attitudes, lack of understanding and respect, or bad social influences also. When people just try to poke their noses into things and they try to poison your minds and things like that. So many times there can be these bad social influences. So we can term it up as gap in age. The age gap brings about, this kind of a bridge, this kind of a gap. And moral values lead to a clash of personalities. Then rigidity on the part of, maybe both, we can say. So we'll just keep it as rigidity. Rigidity without any giving into any kind of change or compromise or adjustment. And then it could be lack of understanding and respect, or it could also be social influences. Okay, all right. And in this poem, the father longs for the same relationship with his son which he shared in his childhood, in his son's childhood. And he is ready to forgive him also, like Adam and the prodigal son story. And he wishes a rapprochement, a reconciliation, a patch up. But he feels helpless to break the ice. He finds it very, very difficult to break the ice. He wants it, he's longing for it. There's a deep desire within him, ready to forgive also. But he's not being able to break the ice and have this togetherness, this bonding, this connect once again. Okay, now we take on the question and answers, please. Okay. Does the poem talk of an exclusively personal experience, or is it fairly universal? The father's experience in the poem is fairly universal, because all over the world we do come across this word generation gap. The rift between the father and the son is now a common experience. We call it the generation gap. A father who belongs to a different generation and he fails to understand and appreciate the son's values and ways of life that belong to a different time. And similarly, a son also resents all his father's efforts to, impose his values on him. And so both become strangers in the long run. Okay. Today times are changing. Then there is another thing with generation gap which is bringing about a problem, and that is you must actually mention it in your answer also. It's not only generation gap, it is also communication gap that brings things to a standstill. If you communicate, if you sit down, if you discuss, if you analyze, there's always a solution to every problem, provided you do it with a calm mind and you are positive in your approach and your attitude. So communication gap is another very valuable point in maintaining relationships. Okay, next question. How is the father's helplessness brought out in the poem? Now, the father's helplessness is poignantly, this word you must use in literature, when you're writing something, poignant, Poignant. Poignant means very touching, very sad. So it's sadly or, poignantly brought out in the poem. He regrets, there is regret in him that he and his son have become strangers to each other, even though they've been living in the same house together for years. But now, at this particular time, he fails to understand what his son wants and what he wants to communicate, to say, and why he is behaving in such a strange manner with him. So he longs for the return of the son to him, like the prodigal son, the wasteful son. And the last lines, we each put out an empty hand, but there's no result, and longing for something to forgive. So this expresses his helplessness and his complete alienation with his son. It's very, very sad, because how the father has brought up the son in his childhood, and he's nurtured him, given the very best to him, exhausted all his energy, his resources, everything to bring up the child. But when it comes for the child to take care of the father, or when reversal of roles should be there, in old age, when the father will become the child and the son will become the father, reversal of roles, So Now at this point of time, when actually it was time to repay, then they think, such a situation has come that they are parting ways. They are parting ways. Okay. Identify the phrases and lines that indicate distance between the father and the son. So the first one is, I do not understand this child. Next one, I know nothing of him. We speak like strangers. Yet what he loves, I cannot share. He speaks, I cannot understand. We each put out an empty hand, longing for something to forgive. So these are the lines that communicate to the reader that the situation that is there, or the kind of relationship that the father and son are sharing. Okay, next question. What is the problem of the father? The father in the poem is quite sad, and he's lamenting in this poem about this a break in relationship with his son. But this sadness also leads to anger. That grief leads to anger. His problem is that he's sharing the same roof, the same house with his son, but there is no dialogue, there is no warmth in their relationship. They have different temperaments and different attitudes. What does the father want? The father wants to bridge the gap between him and his son. He wants to share a very good rapport with him. R-A-P-P-O-R-T. He wants to share a very good rapport, relationship with him. And he's also ready to forgive his son if he returns to him. Now see, he's ready to forgive provided the son comes back, So only then the father can forgive him. But if the son doesn't come back, then what is the father going to forgive? That is why it's complete break in relationship. So he wants his son to come back to him so that he can forgive him. And then he can share his love and beliefs with him. Next question. What is the irony of the situation? The irony is the father recognizes, and he is well aware of the fact that though his son has grown up as per his desires, the way he had nurtured him, and the way he had brought him up, but even then he does not understand his son's emotions. If he did, then there wouldn't have been such a situation. Okay, so that is the irony. The father has brought him up, nurtured him just as he wanted to bring him up, but in the end, he just lands up not understanding anything about the child, not knowing anything about him, not understanding his emotions at all. What does the line "silence surrounds us" mean? This line stands for the coldness in the relation between the father and the son. Though they have been living together under the same roof for so many years, but there is no warmth in their relationship. Next question. Does the father really wish his son to be prodigal? Literally, it means yes. But in reality, the father longs for the betterment of his son. He doesn't want him to become prodigal, wasteful, and then come back to him. He does not wish any such kind of ill for his son. He only wants the betterment of his son. As a father, he doesn't want any gap or, any break between his son and him. And he's ready to do anything to win him back, to have him back, to win him back. Okay. Why is the father angry? Now, the father is angry because he is unable to understand the emotions of his son. And this inability, leads to grief, that he is not being able to understand. So this drawback or this flaw in him, what happens? He begins to be grieved with that. He's full of sorrow because of that reason. And eventually it culminates in anger. And this anger is basically, why is this anger there? Because of the self-accusation, the realization, the externalization of his self-accusation. Self-accusation because somewhere he's trying to blame himself, that the realization sets in that maybe all this is because of me. So that's why the anger is there. Okay, next question. How is the father's helplessness brought out in the poem? It's quite clearly brought out in the poem that he has, tried his level best to bring his child up accordingly, but then when it was time for the child to actually give back, or to, as a farmer, to get back the fruit, the son fell short of his expectations. And but still he does not blame the son for that. That is, he blames himself. The self-accusation that he has, he blames himself for all this, for not understanding the child's emotions. And even though they've been living under the same roof for so many years, they are like strangers to each other. There is no warmth in them. I mean, when you talk to strangers, there's a lot of, you're very formal. And when you're talking at home, or when you're talking to people you love, then you're very casual. So this was talking to strangers, means a very formal kind of a talk, which did not speak of any kind of love or any kind of warmth in their relationship. Okay. Now, here I would like to say that as I told you, please, you must make a note of it, that it is not only the problem of generation gap, it is also the problem of communication. When you just close up, when you bottle up and you don't want to say anything, obviously, how does the other person know what's going on in your heart and mind? So it is very important to discuss, to express your feelings, to say what you want, and only then things can settle down. And yes, for the parents' point of view, it is definitely there that with the changing times, one has to change. One cannot, hold on to the old obsolete customs and, norms that are there. But with times, you have to change. And change is the only constant phenomena. And there can be peace and, love only when there is a little bit of adjustment. So it is not only for the parents, it's for the children also to respect, because the elderly parents have their own point of view. So respect their opinion, but at the same time, try to explain it to them that, things have to change. They cannot be rigid. And at the same time, for children, it should be that, parents always yearn or work or desire for the welfare and the betterment of their children. They can never think ill of their children. So have patience with them, listen to them, and give them that little happiness of at least patiently listening to them. If you and try to explain to them why you cannot follow what they want. I mean, like with changing times, the little changes that have to be made, the little adjustments that have to be made, all that is very, very important. Like here also in today's world, joint families are breaking up, nuclear families are there. Because probably children want their independence, their freedom. They don't want any kind of imposition from, the parental guidance or parental control on them. So times are changing. When they see others, they also want to become like that, So maybe it's short-lived, but still, you have to explain. And as I told you, amicably you sit down, settle down. Every problem can be solved because there is a solution to every problem, provided you are patient and you think logically and you respect each other's opinion or point of view. Okay, so this sacred relationship of the father and son should always remain intact. And another thing is, life is a boomerang, whatever you do with your parents, your children are bound to do it with you, because what they see, they imbibe and they learn. So for your writing skills also, all this that I'm talking and can be for the generation gap and communication gap, So today children see that the old parents are being neglected. So automatically when they grow up, they're going to give the same kind of love and respect that you give to your elders. So in order to secure your future, it is better to secure the future of your elderly people. So I hope you've understood the text and the poem has been clear to you. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you all.